Call to order a work session of the Goodyear City Council, 19 June 2006. Well, Frank's MIA, but he'll be here soon. We expect Frank to be here, so. No, that's all right.
Yeah, he could sit in for the MIA.
Yeah. Well, we have 6 of us from council in attendance, and we expect that Councilmember Cavalier will be here momentarily. We have one item on our agenda, and that's to receive an update on the city facilities. And I think, Don French, you had that, read that off?
Did you want to wait for?
No.
Mayor Kavanaugh, members of council, we're here tonight to really kick off the facilities master plan process. And we're going to have a presentation by Deutsch Architects. Tammy Carr is here along with Dave Calcaterra. And they're going to give a presentation, but the purpose of this meeting today is to hear your thoughts on facilities for the city of Goodyear. So please, as they go along, anytime, interrupt, ask questions, interject, discuss. That's the purpose of this. So we would encourage you to do that. And with that, I'll introduce Tammy. We'll kick it off.
Well, then, council, we're given the opportunity just when you have a question, just ask it. Sure. Don't hesitate. Okay.
I was glad you heard that because I was going to note that he said it was okay to interrupt.
It's not connected. It's absolutely okay to interrupt, and thank you all for having us here today. And as Don stated, the purpose of this presentation is to get your feedback. Deutsch Associates Architects was awarded the contract to perform a project for the city to do the master plan of all future facilities and up to 20 years, and also to help with future capital improvement plan projects for the next 5 years. So that's where we're at today. And as Don also stated, this is the very initial kickoff. So before we did anything, we wanted to get together with you and find out what was important to you and get your feedback on what you're looking for out of the master plan and out of future city facilities. So that's why we're here. So please interrupt with any questions or input you have.
I think initially, as we get started here, we've kind of broken down each of the phases that we're going to. One is meeting with you here today. Then we're going to meet with the other consultants on some of the other projects that are ongoing right now. And then during that time, we're going to basically prepare a draft document to the city, and then we're going to do multiple meetings with the public, 3 meetings to be exact, at locations to be determined. And during those meetings, we'll have kind of an open forum type of setting where we'll maybe set up some different stations to talk about different projects, etc., so people can come in at will and discuss those projects.
One of the other things that I wanted to point out to you guys is that it's our understanding that September you have a session set up which will talk about future facilities and what you're looking for in those future facilities, and going out to the public prior to that with your wishes on future facilities will really help us gather data to give you some base to go off of in the September meeting. So we're hoping to get all that done prior to your September session. So our agenda today, we just have 6 bullet points of things we want to hit with you today, and we'll just move on past that.
Again, like I discussed before, we'll have an open house format. And when we get later on to the presentation, you'll see that we'll actually pick some specific projects that we'll ask for some information later on, necessarily in this meeting, to actually discuss and have presented in those meetings.
Your current space conditions, as most of you recall, last year we did a bridging study for the city of Goodyear, and the current space conditions of your fiscal year 2006 is that you're currently over capacity in multiple departments at IOB, as well as council and court. Field service departments, police, fire, and public works are also past their current capacity, and their current situations, space only. Community center, rec, and a recent staff survey was completed, and one of the concerns that current staff have is their current working environment, and they feel like it would be a great benefit to have a better working environment, or at least to know when they will have a better working environment.
Well, while you're on that subject, we know that the new city center is just a blip on the radar screen. Is there any potential or probability of us moving the construction of the city center up a little bit closer to the current date?
The city center right now is going through programming with HDR Engineering, and we are working in coordination with themselves and the two other consultants who are performing programming for your Public Works corporate yard, as well as your City Justice Center, which is being done by Durant. So we're working in coordination with all of them to find out the timing and the standards. I don't necessarily know that there's any indication of moving that up, but later in the presentation we are asking for your input on the prioritization of the projects, and if that is a prioritization to move that project up, we would be.
Well, the reason I asked the question, it seems to me, as you pointed out, the space problem that we have right now, is that this should indicate that we should be active in moving this forward, so we don't have staff moving from here to there. We're going back 4 years again, to moving staffs around into the building that we have up north, it's the current city hall, and we're just getting back in the same frame.
Absolutely, time is of the essence, and as you'll notice on this slide, you're currently leasing facilities at the Goodyear Financial Center, and it states up there how much you're paying to house your staff in that center until 2010, when the one that's your blip on the screen is to be completed currently. So that will help you put into context how much you're spending to temporarily house those people. And then also the Vendita Business Park, which is anticipated approval for later this year, and anticipated move-in by staff by the end of this year. Those are fixes that are going to help solve the problem temporarily, but there's definitely an urgency to make sure that projects keep moving and that they go expeditiously, so that you can make sure that staff has the space that they need.
Well, I ask this question, and very pointedly, because I want staff to be aware of what we're doing here. I mean, we're looking at $200,000 right now for moving people around, and we invest that in a new city center. So staff should really seriously consider that and move this project along before we get involved in anything else. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Councilman.
Back up real quick one slide for me, if you would. Just 200 cost for these for 2,200 square feet until 2010 is $220,000 between now and 2010, right?
Yes.
Okay. So it's not that's not an annual.
No.
That's okay.
Good point, Tom. Thank you.
I think that one of the phases that we mentioned earlier on, there's a phase where we're actually refining the documents, the deliverable that we'll be giving you. Some things to take in consideration as we're doing that are not only list of priorities for the projects individually, which ones we're moving forward, but also priorities within the projects. LEED certifications, what the buildings look like, should all the municipal buildings conform to each other, should there be design standards. Design standards means the look of the buildings with also sizes of offices, etc. No, yeah. I think we just have a few slides here. We kind of listed current CIP projects on this slide, and I'll just kind of get through here. Potential future facilities, and then I want to get to the last slide. And we're going to hand out a sheet to everybody, and what we want to try to do is create a list of about a priority of 5 projects that we want to present in those work sessions to the public. What are the projects that we list as a priority to discuss in those meetings? So although we're asking you to prioritize them 1 through whatever the number is there, really we're looking at taking the top 5 or so projects.
Good question.
I have a question. Normally, what is the percentage of employees that work in a city hall?
Total employment
I
workforce.
mean, how much of our workforce, is it 65% of our workforce that we would normally? Now, I know we're housing people all over right now, but is there, I mean,
Is there a specific percentage
I just
of,
kind of wonder how many, we built the city hall.
how many will that take?
Yeah.
You know, well, we have some information from our bridging study. We can go back and look at that, and I can give you that percentage.
All right.
I don't want to give you one.
Yeah.
I could be off 20%. That's a big number.
Well, I think really that it depends upon the different municipality and how you function. There are a lot of municipalities that like having satellite locations because the way their land is laid out, that they may have a lot of territory to cover, so they have more satellite locations where you guys are more elongated, so maybe it makes more sense for you to have one central location as you started out having here. So it really is a preference per municipality, but we can certainly give you the departments that typically are housed in a city hall and what your projections are for the next 5 years,
Thank you.
so you can see the percentage.
I have a question. My question's for Stephen. Stephen, how and when were the decisions made to lease this interim property until ready to move in the city center, as opposed to purchasing this property, which absolutely would have made the city a profit? Who made that decision? When was it made, and so forth?
Are you speaking of the leasing of the temporary space immediately north?
Yes.
That has been a function of staff conversations, and on various occasions I've shared pieces of that information with council members to try to give you a sense of some interim solutions. At the time that that conversation was occurring, there were no, shall I say, spaces available for purchase that we could find. We do believe in the big picture that we should be buying properties, and at any time that we can find a way to actually make that purchase, we're going to come back to council, and who knows, maybe the space that you ask about or reference to, if that were to ever come available, we'd come back and have a formal conversation with council and say, how about just moving that to a purchase and moving out of our lease arrangement and just make that a part of the overall acquisition process?
So that's still a possibility. And how about the property west of us, the Cornwall property? Is that a done deal for leasing, or is that?
The Veneta piece, which was what they were talking about, is the Cornwell property.
Right.
And that specific proposal is coming to council July 10th.
Okay, that proposal to lease?
Yes.
Or is there an option out there?
At the moment, they're more interested in only a lease arrangement, and what we were doing based upon last fall's conversation when we were talking about the bridging efforts
Yeah.
was to find a place to temporarily house ourselves until such time as we could move to City Hall, and much of that space is more industrial orientation and less desirable to maybe have as a purchase. And that's where we were at that particular time. Again, we can go back to them and have those kind of conversations as to whether or not they would be willing to sell.
I think that's a pretty serious decision-making process.
Those decisions will also be coupled with what are the financial capabilities of the city at that particular time as well. So, yes, we're constantly looking for ways and prepared to bring up those ideas back to you.
Okay, thank you.
I see you guys are already filling it out, so that'll make our job easier. If you have them for us now, that'd be great. If not, you can give them to the clerk, and we can pick them up later.
Define the mass transit item on here, because mass transit program versus a bus yard or a park and ride facility is two totally different things.
Well, we came up with this list from our work with multiple other municipalities and doing master plans for them with a growing community like yours, what you typically would provide to the community as benefits, and one of them is mass transit program with having bus stops and also different types of transportation, different little personal vans and things like that. So what we're saying is you might want to consider in the future, because our plan does go up to 20 years, where you might think about adding that in, or whether or not it's a priority at all to provide community. And what we're looking for, again, from here is help from council and mayor from your standpoint, what you would like us to focus on when we do the public open house format. So as we have architects there to lead different focus groups, that we focus on particular projects. So for instance, if a performing arts facility is something that shows up on everybody's agenda as something that's important to you to provide to the community, one of the architects or a Deutsche Associates representative would lead that focus group on finding out from the community what's important for them in a performing arts center. Is it just a black box theater, or is it renting space once in a while from a local gymnasium, or is it a complete performing arts center that could be used for multiple venues, and getting input from the community, which we would then bring back to you and provide some data and base for you to move on with your decisions on what makes the most sense for the city to provide.
Are there any other questions? I have several.
I just wonder if, well, to the mass transit thing, I just wonder if I guess if I'm reading this, you're going to get a lot of interpretations on that specific one. And so if we're talking park and rides, you know, at least from my perspective, I'm being very specific to one of your topics, but we know we have regional dollars that are going to play a part in park and rides, but we may not in dial-a-ride. That's probably solely a 90 to 100% subsidy on the part of the city. And so it's two totally different things depending on the audience you're talking about. And so I would just ask that, I don't know if there's a way. I know you're trying to make it very simple and sweet and get some information, but I mean, if you ask me mass transit program and you say we need buses out here and we need a few parking rides, I'm going to say sure. Regional's going to play a part in that. We're going to play a part in that. If you're going to ask me about dial-a-ride and some other things, it's, then I start to get a little bit more conservative because we're not quite there yet.
Feel free to be specific on this form, too. So if you want to specify what you're in favor of or what you would like to see the push for, please be specific.
And if there's something that's not on there.
Absolutely.
Right. Like bus stops, for instance, we're already building them into development plans. I mean, there should be bus pullouts on the streets. There should be, to some extent, shelters already being provided in some areas. So, anyway, okay. Good. Yeah.
Okay, before I get into a few questions, that chart you had up there.
Go back to the dollar chart.
There you go. I guess this is for staff. The 14,000 square feet of office space, is that associated at all with the Public Works corporate yard? It's in addition to? Is that part of the wastewater treatment plant upgrade? What is that?
The 14,000 square feet represents the administrative building for the wastewater treatment facility.
I know. But
it is.
That is part of the water treatment plant upgrade. That is part of that entire project.
So that's part of that?
Yes.
Okay. And that's already underway then?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay. You, as a company, you do more than collect information. You also make technical observations, right?
Absolutely.
I just asked you to consider these following things in your process. One is, what are we going to do with that site, aquifer treatment, that SAT site we have at the city center in the northwest corner? As we build the city center, as we build it, what's the plan, or what do you suggest be done with that source of water? It's an affluent source. It's 3,000 gallons a day, 3 million gallons, going to 4. Can we use that as a source there within the city center plan, or should we reduce it dramatically and put it somewhere else? But that's something that we need someone to look at. I would guess that's you folks. I didn't see anything here on a firing range, and definitely there's been talk. I know the police chief, Ralph, I don't see Mark here, but Mark and I have talked, and Stephen, about a private-public partnership on a firing range. We've got several existing facilities that we own, all of which are worth money, and they could be used in the future, or as we move to other facilities, they could be sold and used for resources, for financial resources to acquire new facilities. And I think those things have to be done in consonance with one another to reduce the burden, our debt burden. But you need to know, we own 44 acres at Indian School in Cotton, and we bought that for what we thought was an exorbitant price. Because of the inflation of the last 2 years, it's no longer exorbitant. In fact, we should turn a profit on that. What are we going to do with that particular area? We got City Hall, which it's on a mortgage, but we own it. We own the police facilities, right?
Yes.
Yeah. We own the courthouse, I think.
Yes.
Yeah. And we own 90 acres on Broadway, right where the corporate yard may be. So the capability exists for this city to actually leverage its financial holdings. And that has to be part of this process, this intellectual process. And then we're trying to seek a spring training facility for baseball. And if we're successful there, that's 13 fields, which aren't going to be used year-round, and therefore that's a possibility for use for the city and recreation. Whether you get into that, I don't know. But I do know that we're also trying to, and with potential success, trying to encourage private higher education to come to Goodyear, and we've got several institutions very much interested, and we're talking. It's very quiet now, but we are talking to these folks. There may be an opportunity to integrate that type of thought process, education, with our facilities. In fact, one of them wants to do that. So we'll bring those to you when the time is right to do that. Okay, but this is more exciting than just let's bring folks together and see what they want to do. Okay, we want this to end up with a scheme for us to move to the future. So.
Agreed. Understood.
And a citizen had his hand raised.
Come to the mic.
Yes.
Could you put up the slide with the list that you put up before council, please? Thank you.
That one?
Yeah, that's good. Gary Gelser, citizen of Goodyear. Mr. Mayor, the list that you were provided is, from my quick look at this list, is really a list addressed at two different groups of people, and I think you need to address it when you position this list. One of the lists, you talk about putting out a list to the public, and I can't see the public understanding what a municipal training center is, what a public works substation, what a police station is, what a wastewater treatment facility are, or administrative needs of the community. The public's going to tell you, we want a performing arts center, we want a library, we want this, this, and this. And the staff who actually have to work through all these processes are going to tell you an entirely different list. So in essence, what my recommendation would be is you have two lists, one of which is a staff priority list of facilities that we need to perform our function and better serve the citizens, and the second list be a citizen list of, we want these facilities. And speaking of library, I hope you will participate in the Maricopa County library system, and that we don't try to do it ourselves just like Glendale does, because you can't take a book out of Glendale if you live in Goodyear without paying $40 to join their library system. Otherwise, you have to go through this massive interlibrary loan system. So if we participate in the grand scheme of things, we won't reduplicate everything. But I think you have two audiences that you're trying to address here, and I think they're the priorities. Your priorities and staff's priorities on one group of items is going to be very different than what the public, who doesn't come and sit with me, knows.
No, it makes a lot of sense. But part of your process, you're going to investigate and hopefully recommend to us a priority scheme. that incorporates all the thought process involved. Is that correct?
That is correct, and we want to be able to come back. We're going to meet again. I mean, this isn't the only meeting that we're going to have with council, and we want to be able to come back with everything that we find out from these public meetings, come back to council and say, this is what we found. And at that point, we can also discuss what we think is priorities based on the knowledge that we've gained, not only talking to staff, but also having those meetings with the public.
And your own technical expertise.
Yes.
The other thing I wanted to point out.
Dave, do you have the second list, or is this the only list?
Oops.
Okay.
These are the current fiscal CIP projects.
These are the current CIP projects that are going to take care of current staff and their needs for the future, the facilities projects.
I know what these are. I mean, I know
You've seen them a lot.
I've seen them a lot. I've seen this process go through for the last 5 years, so some of them may get built before I'm dead. That would be really cool.
The other thing we wanted to point out was that this list, actually, that we handed out to mayor and council is a list strictly for mayor and council, and the other key stakeholders within the city will receive this list, which will be department heads and management staff. And the actual public meetings will be focusing on the projects that float to the top of the list. So we actually are not going to take the entire list out and just have the community prioritize.
So what I'm saying is the community doesn't understand that moving the SAP site is important because we have groundwater recharge dollars and everything else. They don't understand that. They're thinking library, performing arts center. They have, you pull out that list, there's going to be 6 projects that are going to be their number 1 through 5 priorities. And those are not the same priorities as what is needed to actually run the government of the city of Newton.
We'll work with you,
That's
Tammy.
what I'm trying to say is you have 2 audiences.
We'll work with you.
Yeah, and you understand that. But I think Gary's saying he wants the technical to come to the top here and be based not necessarily on what people want, but what you really need, which is a reflection of various understandings. The public being one, city staff being another, you being another, an independent voice, right?
Well, that's their challenge during these public meetings is to be able to articulate that. I mean, you all have to articulate that. That's right.
I think the mayor was onto something here. We have properties throughout Goodyear that we purchased, and one of them, what is that, Indian School in Cotton Lane, did you say? Yeah, that's significantly appreciated. We're going to have to pay through the nose for a piece of property, 1.2 acres on Pebble Creek and at the entrance to Pebble Creek there in order to build a fire station. Maybe we ought to be talking about trading properties such as the piece of the action that the mayor mentioned to acquire more of the property at Pebble Creek. And this is just an example so that we can become a developer and not just acquire at top dollar 1.2 acres of property to build a fire station. There's like 9 acres in there that has to be developed commercially. And maybe we can get into a swap with either Robeson or their broker who handles this property for them. And these are the kind of things we ought to be looking at. There's nothing wrong with the city making money.
Okay. Seeing no further comments?
All right. Yeah, I do have one question I have to ask. We're going to go through this exercise of ranking this, but this is of staff, not necessarily you. You're not going to change priorities based on this ranking this evening from because we all have different opinions of where the CIP lies, but collectively we come up with that direction, and just hope that somebody wouldn't say, okay, well, now that we've got this ranking, we're off and running.
Mr. Mayor, Councilman Antoniak, this process is to complement and further the efforts of the CIP that you previously approved. You approved a 5-year CIP. This is looking at how to connect the 6th year, the additional projects subsequent years into that process so that in September you can take the input that you've received from the public side, the open houses, any of the technical data, the information provided with your input and wrestle with that question in September as to what that new 5th year of projects would be in the year 2011. and anything subsequent to that out into the outer years. It also, through this process during the course of the next year, they'll be coming forward with dollar costs, dollar implications, and we can wrestle that one with the financial side of the house to determine what cash flows, what's the best way of acquiring and moving some of these projects forward, to ultimately get back to Mr. Seuss's question about can you advance these? Well, they're going to look at what are the ways that you can streamline a city hall, city center process. And there are several out there that we've had some brief conversations about. So all of that coupled together, this is the umbrella project wherein a number of these other initiatives on other projects are feeding information up into them. So this is to make sure we bring everything together in a bucket and have a council document, that becomes more or less a policy document for guidance on where we go in future years for the multiple years of projects. Ultimately, it's a 20-year plan on how do we get at our capital projects for city facilities, as it were.
Yeah, I think Councilmember Antoniak and I and Gary are concerned about something here, and maybe I'm wrong, correct me if I'm, that we really want you to collect the input from everybody of what they want. But what is key here, to me, is not the data collection of what people want, but the data collection of technical information out there, the financials, the needs of the particular departments, what's to be leveraged easily up front, those types of things. The technical ramifications of this is why you're here. If it were strictly to collect opinions, we'd do it ourselves. So, is that right?
No, yeah, you just,
So,
you put it in a nutshell.
Absolutely.
okay. Okay, thanks for coming. See you a lot in the future. Meeting adjourned. We'll take a,
I don't have mine, let me do it in a minute.
3 minutes?
Yeah, Kenny is.
Would be at least 3 minutes.
okay, 5:37. How's that? And then we'll start off the CFD meeting.
It's the only one that